Yeah. All right. So basically, in my words, I would call it networking with Christ. And we did look upon the gospel according to St. John. Uh, can you please enable screen share for me, please? Oh, yeah, thank you. So we did speak about anti-fragility in a theocratic and multifaceted world. We spoke about how could we be networking for Christ, right? We looked, and then we basically summed up all our discussions in 5 Ds: direction, desire, direction pointing to, like John the Baptist pointed to Jesus, the greater one, the desire to know where do you live. Andrew and the disciple asked Jesus. The discovery, they found out that he was the Messiah. They declared about the Messiah to at least uh, Andrew, Andrew went and told to Peter that yes, this is the Messiah. And then we saw about the deputation, wherein Peter was given a new name. He was given the name the Rock, Cephas. You would be called the Rock. So I was trying to say about what I was trying to say last week was when we network for Christ, we have to log on and rock. So we are given such a wonderful opportunity to rock with Christ. All right, so today, so basically it's anti-fragility. Now, how can we all be fragile? That would be, what are the ways that we might be fragile in a theocratic and democratic world, I mean, multifaceted world. That's how I'll be thinking basically on my talk today of how would we be fragile. Now, we are all in a context of COVID. And some of the things that we say for COVID is wear a mask, sanitize yourself, um, maintain a physical distancing between people. And that's how we try and tackle this pandemic. So some of the things that we have to make sure is we have a mask, sanitize. At least we have to be careful of our personal hygiene. So not always, that's how I would put it, not always, you know, the other forces can always safeguard us from problems. There would be problems, and we also have the task to make sure that we are safe. So today, how could we be fragile? That would be basically what I'm trying to talk about. And for that, I gave you the portion. I hope most of you have read it. 2 Samuel chapter 11 and chapter 12. It's the story where it's a story of David and Bathsheba. At least quite a familiar story. And based on this text, I would like to journey with you on how could we be fragile? Or in simple words, hacking into the network. I hope all of you are familiar with the term hacking. Hacking കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? ഈ വൈറസ് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ? വൈറസ് കൊറോണ അല്ല, അല്ലാതെ വൈറസ് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
Yes,
could you, I mean, if it's possible, could you unmute yourself and speak? You know, it will be a bit more helpful for me as well. Virus, computer virus, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ mobile virus, attacking, phishing, not FPH, phishing, hacking, എല്ലാം കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
നല്ല കുട്ടികളാ, കുഴപ്പമൊന്നുമില്ല, ആരും അങ്ങനെയൊന്നും ചെയ്യാറില്ല.
അതിന് ഹാക്കിംഗ് സജേഷ് അച്ഛാ, ഞാൻ മാത്രമേ ഉള്ള പ്രശ്നക്കാരൻ ഇവിടെ.
You can correct them but not corrupt them.
ഹാക്കിംഗ് അറിയുന്ന ഒരാളുണ്ട്, റീനിയാണ് ഇവിടുത്തെ വലിയ ഹാക്കർ.
ഓക്കെ, വേൾഡിൽ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ അപ്പം വൈറസ് ക്യാൻ കം ത്രൂ മെനി വേസ്. നമ്മൾ യൂഷ്വൽ നമ്മൾ പെൻ ഡ്രൈവ് നമ്മൾ കുത്തുമ്പോൾ, ഒരു ഹാക്ക് സിസ്റ്റത്തിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരു പെൻ ഡ്രൈവ് കുത്തുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ സിസ്റ്റം ഹാക്ക് ആവും അല്ലേ? ഹാർഡ്വെയർ സിസ്റ്റം. നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ലൈഫ് സ്റ്റൈൽ നമുക്ക് നോക്കാം. ചുമയുള്ള ആളൊന്ന് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എന്നൊന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നമുക്ക് കൊറോണ കിട്ടാൻ ചാൻസസ് കൂടുതലാണ്, മാസ്ക് ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ. ഇങ്ങനെ നിൽക്കുന്നത് ട്രൂ? നോ, the chances are high. So not only the software system, but even our body, physical self also could be hacked in many ways. Not just through, maybe some of our mistakes also can lead us to hacking. Virus, computer virus. I don't know if you know about the virus which has affected the most number of systems in the world. The suggestion അച്ഛൻ പോയി പറഞ്ഞു അച്ഛൻ പോയി കേൾക്കത്തില്ല. Yeah, so which is the any clue which is the system, which is the virus which has affected the most number of systems in the world?
Trojan.
2K virus.
ഋഷുൻ എന്തോ പറഞ്ഞു.
സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത് ഞാൻ കൊറോണ അല്ല, സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത്. 2K is good, yes. 2K virus, it has and the name as well. അറിയാം? Okay, the name of that virus was I love you. പണ്ട് ഈ പെൻ ഡ്രൈവ് ഒന്നും അത്ര ഇല്ല. So we used to get a mail. Earlier there was a time when our emails were very important. As in, ഒരു email കിട്ടിയ, yes, I've got an email. Now yesterday, for the first time in 2.5 years, my land phone suddenly started ringing. Okay, and my wife is like, "Acha, land phone adikkunnu." I'm like, "Nichu ba kali varayalle." Illa acha, land phone adikkunnu. I'm like, "Wow, man, land phone adikkunnu." Njan odi poi phone eduthu. Now afterward I was like, "Okay, adu BSNL vera aarum vilichalla." I started thinking, oh my God, with the coming of mobile phones, some things like a land phone ringing is a big thing. Suddenly getting a letter is a big thing. A letter in your mailbox, not in your Gmail or Yahoo account, but getting a physical letter is a big thing. Other than the insurance company's letters, when you get suddenly a personal letter, it's a big thing. In earlier times, getting an email was a big thing. Getting a letter wasn't. Email might one another in the subject box, and I love you now. So everyone started clicking. Who is this person who loves me? And eventually that system got hacked. Virus, and the abbreviation, I guess most of you know, is Vital Information Resources Under Siege. Vital Information Resources Under Siege. As in, many of your resources are under siege by certain people. You'll have to either pay them a ransom, or they might expose you. So that's how hacking happens. Now, today we are reading about the text of David and Bathsheba. And David, how did his life get hacked? Or how did he be fragile in a theocratic and multifaceted world? So my text for today, I hope most of you have read, was 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1 to chapter 12, verse 13. And what do we see over here? We find over here, there's a hacking of the network, or there was a fragility happening for pleasure and power. Now again, these are the 5 Ds that I'm going to talk to you today again about. Dereliction of duty, death warrant on the innocent, deal making of the powerful, daring profit, and denouncing God. 5 Ds, all good. These are the 5 things I'm going to talk to you about. The first thing, dereliction of duty. Now, what does the Bible say about David? He was such a guy. I love him. He was the glorious. And these are things that the Bible itself talks about David. He was a man of God's own heart. He was a man of Yahweh's own choosing. So when you look at the first book of Samuel, chapter 13, verse 14, you'd find that God actually chose Samuel. I'm sorry, God actually chose David. Then we find that David was also known as the servant of Yahweh in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 18. And then the following verse, and then we also find that he was the anointed of Yahweh. So what we find over here is that David the glorious, or David the king, was handpicked by God. He was the picture perfect guy. No, nothing can happen to him. He was the most eligible person for anything good to happen or bad to happen. Mostly good to happen. He was a man of God's own heart. And I love to hear that kind of a thing that God tells. Joel Hutchin is a man of God's own heart. I wish God tells that. But that I mean, not just me, but I hope that God tells that about all of you guys as well. My point is, he was such a great guy, a man of God's own heart. But what do we see? I hope you have read this text. What do we see over here? We find that there were a problem. There was a dereliction in duty. I'll quickly read chapter 11, verse 1 to 5 quickly. I have time till 11:30, right? 11? Yeah. 11:30, yeah, thank you. In the spring of the year, can all of you please look your Bibles or touch your Bibles, whatever, to 2 Samuel chapter 11. Yeah, thank you. In the spring of the year, the time when kings went out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman. It was reported, "This is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." So David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she was purifying herself after her period. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." Now, this isn't a text that we usually take for a devotion. I agree. This is a text that we usually come up to say, "David, yo man, you did all the good things, but here you have something bad." We usually take this text to actually pinpoint to David. He had all the good things. You see over here, he was a man of God's own heart, man of Yahweh's own choosing, the servant of Yahweh, anointed of Yahweh, and all these things. But what happened to David? He forgot his duty. Now, what does verse 1 and verse 3 read when I just read? We read that in the spring of the year, when kings go out to battle, David the king was supposed to lead the Israelite army to battle. That was his duty. But what does King David do? He stayed back. He remained at Jerusalem. Now, when we look at the history of the Israelites, we find that in the beginning, after the period of the judges and when Prophet Samuel was actually judging over the Israelites, we find that Israelites come to Samuel and say, "We need a king." So Samuel asks them, "Why do you want a king?" And they say, "We want a king like the other nations who would go out before us to fight our battles." So what they expected of a king was to lead them in battles. That is where we find in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 11 to verse 18. So David was actually called for this purpose. Now we read continuously that he has led many a battle in his life. But this battle, he did not go. He stayed back. So instead of staying in the front line of the battle, he stayed back. And there becomes a change in the lifestyle of a leader. So when David forgot his duty, I would put it in this way, simple, his life got hacked. So we are all prone to hacking. All of us. Are we forgetting our duty? Are we forgetting what God has entrusted upon us? Are we letting ourselves be fragile? Now, we might be anti-fragile, but are we letting ourselves be fragile? It is because of sometimes our own responsibilities that certain things happen in our life. So instead of staying in the front, David stayed back, and there was a change in the lifestyle of. Now, why could there be a change in the lifestyle of a leader of David's caliber? He had a humble beginning. He wasn't rated high. Now, we look at the first book of Samuel, chapter 16. We find that God tells Prophet Samuel that I have completely neglected the king Saul, and no one from his family ever again will be king. I have chosen a person from the family of Jesse to be the next king of Israel. And then what happens is eventually, after all, there was a dialogue conversation between God and Prophet Samuel. I would encourage you to read 1 Samuel chapter 16. Cutting the big story short, we find that Samuel tells the family of Jesse, tells Jesse to bring all his sons to offer a sacrifice to God. And then he brings over there 7 sons come with Jesse. The first one, God neglects. Second one neglects. No. All 7 is neglected. And then Prophet Samuel asks Jesse, "Are these all your sons?" And then Jesse replies, "There is still one. He's taking care of the sheep." So when I paraphrase it, it would mean, I have one more son, but he's not fit to be the king. So David had a humble beginning. He was not rated high. And what does chapter 17 of 1 Samuel teach us? He was willing to fight a battle against Goliath, even when he did not want to, even when he was not entitled to. Why? Because he was not even in the army. He was a shepherd boy. He comes and tells, okay, I am ready to fight against Goliath. But now when in this text, in 2 Samuel chapter 11, when we come across this text, what do we find over here? David, he's entrusted to go to battle, but he's staying back. He's not willing to go to battle. So is somewhere pride and arrogance taken over David? Has pride and arrogance led him to staying back in his palace? Or did mission become a routine for him? Now, many a time in our lives also, we are always blessed with a number of blessings. Somewhere do we feel, no, it's because of my own hard work that I've got it? Are we forgetting that it is because of the grace of our Lord that we are blessed, we have been blessed with immensely? Are we forgetting God and being more proud of what we are? And that is when we are opening ourselves to be hacked. So David's lifestyle had a change. He would be maybe living in his past glory, and now he's being complicit. He would have had enough rough weather, and now he's enjoying. And eventually what happens is he becomes what he is not supposed to be. Now, when we read this text, now we'll be coming to that portion again. The ark of the God was something the Israelites took when they went for the battle. Now we find about David that David was very much concerned about the ark of God. When we read First Chronicles, also we find that David wanted to build a house for the ark of God. So he was very much concerned of the ark of God. But over here, what do we see? The ark of the God is in battle. He's not even bothered about it. Now this is the same David we find in 2 Samuel chapter 7, especially verse 2 and Psalm 132, where he speaks and where he considers the ark of the God to be very much important. But in this text, he's not concerned about it. So it is basically because of David's failures or David's problems itself that certain bad things happened in his life, or else he was prone to be hacked by God. Not only by God, but by many forces as well. So we are now, let's put it in this way. I have a laptop over here. Which are the easiest way for a laptop to be infected by a virus? The easiest method would mean one of my friend's laptop, he would have had a virus in it. He plugs in a pen drive, copies a movie or copies whatever he wants, or maybe a document or something. He gives the pen drive to me. I plug it in, my laptop will be perfect. Maybe I wouldn't have a strong antivirus, but I have a perfect laptop. Maybe I haven't updated my antivirus. So since I've not updated my antivirus, certain viruses, the new ones, would easily infect my virus as well. Same way, I have a mask. If I don't wear a mask, I start walking around, there are higher chances of me getting infected by a COVID-19. So whenever we forget our duty, whenever we forget to update ourselves, update meaning updating ourselves in the Word of God, updating ourselves on the knowledge of God. And we all have information about God. Last week I said, we all have many informations about God. But are we able to personalize those informations? Are we able to personalize those informations and every day have a personal encounter with God? If we don't update ourselves, there are higher chances of us getting prone to be hacked. So what do we see over here? In verse 2, what do we see? It happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house. So let's say he is the big king. Now this was a normal battle, a weaker country that Israelites were going to fight about. So he sends, fine. He was a soldier who was always supposed to be awake. There was a time when India and Pakistan were at almost, last year India and Pakistan, this year India and China. So there was a time when India and Pakistan were at war. So one of my friends, they call me up and ask, Joy Racha, is there a time when India and Pakistan would be carrying on battle? I was like, eh, time? Oh? Then one of my friends, this wasn't actually because Ambala is close by. Ambala and Pathankot is close by. And these are the border areas of Pakistan. And these are the areas from where we have the Rafale and all of the jets taking off. So the hub of all the war front, especially between India and Pakistan or India and China, happens to be from the place where I am. Chandigarh, Ambala, Pathankot are all, Chandigarh is where I am. Pathankot and Ambala are quite nearby. So this was in a WhatsApp conversation. And one of my friends said, onda. And he was responding, onda, yuddha onda. രാവിലെ 9 മണിക്ക് തുടങ്ങും 10 മണിയാകുമ്പോൾ അവർ ചായ കുടിക്കാൻ നിർത്തും 12 o'clock again, then after half an hour they restart the war. 1 o'clock they break for lunch, 4 o'clock again they have tea, 6 o'clock they call it off, then they go and sleep. The next day morning they again start. അങ്ങനല്ല യുദ്ധം. War can happen anytime. This was actually pulling the other person's leg, this response. Now my point is, a soldier is always supposed to be alert, awake. David the soldier over here is sleeping. The sense of his mission, it conditioned his lifestyle. Now, how is the sense of mission among us today? Is there an apathy, slackness, complacency, or chalta hai attitude? Chalta hai as in anything goes attitude. So when we have certain apathy, when we forget our duty, especially when a soldier is supposed to be awake, he's a soldier. When he forgot his duty, we see that he comes across a privileged access and pleasure seeking. Now what happens over David changed lifestyle, landed him in the wrong place at the wrong time. So can we all take a moment and check with ourselves to God? Am I at the right place or am I at the wrong place at the wrong time? Have I forgotten my duty? My duty would be everything that God has entrusted upon me. Could be my studies, could be my work, could be my family, could be my friends. All these are what God has entrusted me. Am I forgetting my duty towards them? I have two of my members are school teachers. So the last day during Teachers' Day, I called them up, I wished them. And I was wishing them, I said, I hope in a changing educational scenario, you guys are able to have a wonderful time teaching. It's only about 2 to 3 hours you have to teach, and rest it's all bindas for you guys. You can take a chill pill. Otherwise, it's for morning. Over here, our school starts over here at morning 7:30, goes on till 2:30. So you had so long a time. Now it's only for 2 hours, 3 hours sitting at your home, and you can all do things your way. And one of the things both the teachers told me was that, Acha, we are in a big stress now. I asked why. They say, Acha, children, they log on to the software. They meet through Google Meet or through Zoom or through different mediums. And what all these nice children do is that they log in themselves. When the attendance is taken, they switch on their video. They say, present, ma'am. Then they cut their video. I'm not even sure if they're listening to what I'm telling. I'm not even sure if they're sitting in front of the laptop. Who knows, they will be watching TV. Because whenever we conduct a test paper on certain subjects, on certain topics, these children are not able to get or score well, though the questions are very simple. A changing scenario. We are also at, more luxurious lifestyles many a time. All the good things are there in front of us. Are we able to actually use it for the betterment of ourselves, or are we using them and making ourselves be prone to be happy? Are we at the right place at the right time, or are we at the wrong place at the wrong time? What happens over here? David's case. We find that he had a privileged gaze and pressure. What did he do? He was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. Now we all know this, much like the picture that I've put over here. We all know this. The king's palace would be much taller or much higher than any other apartments or penthouse that would have been there in his kingdom. So he had a vision to see his entire kingdom. Now, what does this power of being a king give him? This power gained him a vantage position and privileged access even to the privacy of the other person. He had two gazes. privileged view from a rooftop. He could see everything. And the second access that he had was the perception. He saw a woman bathing and she was beautiful. The perception of what was viewed as beautiful and desirable. This was the privacy of another person. But King David ventured into that privacy, and he ended up being, moving fast to consume what he thought as the beautiful and desirable. So the moment he found that this woman was beautiful, he sent someone to inquire about this woman. He came to know who she was. He got her into his palace. He slept with her. That was it. So there we find that there was no level of intimacy, or there was no level of anything, much more of love happening between David and Bathsheba over here. It was all about David playing the big guy, telling, okay, I find this, okay, I'm the king around here, go get information about her, get her to my palace, have her suit to my whims and fancies. That was what David did. He immediately gathered information about her. He processed the data in spite of having a no access board. There was only, certain people allowed. We all find, when we go to certain restaurants or certain hotels, we find that, certain positions, certain places are only for certain people, not for everyone, not accessible to everyone. But over here, David went beyond that. He went to access something in spite of having a no access board. So verse 4, we see he sent, he took, he lay. There was no hinting of care, affection, or love between them. So we find that David over here exploited the privileged access and the information for pleasure that David had as a king. He forgot his duty, and that is where he had a dereliction in his duties. The moment he forgot his mission, he forgot his duty, there happened a problem. So whenever we forget our duty, whenever we forget our mission, we are opening ourselves to be hacked by certain forces. Let me move forward. Number 2, death warrant on an innocent. Now, David could not control everything in his life. He was the king. He thought he could control everything. But there were certain things he couldn't control. And that is what we find in verse 5. 2 words made a big problem for him. Those 2 words were, I am pregnant. Now, the moment David gets to know that because of his act, Bathsheba is pregnant, he tried to use all his administrative mechanism to cover up something that he did, to cover up his personal problems. This is something that people in power usually tend to do. Because of their problems, they use the administrative mechanism to cover up their problems. And what does he do? What does David do here? He sends a messenger to Joab, the commander-in-chief, and asks him to send back Uriah the Hittite. So Uriah comes to the king's palace, and Uriah and David actually treats Uriah. He tells him, "Do one thing. You go and sleep with your wife." He tries to appease Uriah, but Uriah tells, "No, the ark of the God is in battle. My master Joab is in the battlefront. I will not spend time with my wife." So he got up to, David over here, he went up to cover up certain things, but he was not able to perfectly do that. Now, who was Uriah? Now, Uriah, he was a person who was not a Jew for that matter. He would be a person from another nations. But Uriah was one of the 30 specialized soldiers. When we read the entire text of 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 24 to 39, we find that Uriah was, one of 30. Now, they had specialized soldiers. Every military army had. So Uriah was one of the 30 specialized soldiers. He was a non-Israelite who went for battle for Israel. He was a man of God. And the word Uriah means Yahweh is my light, or Yahweh is my fire. Now, in this entire text of chapter 11, we find that David kept calling Uriah, not by his name, but just calling him Uriah the Hittite all the time. Whereas the biblical narrator, whoever wrote this text, calls him Uriah. And what does verse 6 to 9 do? Uriah, we find that David is trying to appease. Uriah was called in as a messenger, and David tries to appease him by being a benevolent master, giving him treats, food, water. Many a times when we are treated in many ways, we should always remember there would be certain things why the other person is doing certain things for us. For example, if someone is coming up and giving me, Joel Acha, I'm giving you so much money, there would be some reason why that person is giving me. One of the lessons that one of my senior Achins taught me over the past 2 years, the moment I became an Achin, one of the things he called me up, he wished me and he told me is, always make sure what Abraham said to King Ahimelech. We find that in Genesis. Do not let the other person say, I have made you rich. Ahimelech the king wanted to give Abraham a lot of gifts because Ahimelech asked something to Abraham which he was not supposed to ask. He asked for Sarah to spend a night with him. And then when God told Ahimelech that he is the wife of Abraham, the next day King Ahimelech tells Abraham, okay, I've done certain wrong, so you please take something from me in return of the wrong I did. And then Abraham tells, no, I will not give an option to anyone to say, I am rich because of you. Same thing in our lives. When someone is doing something that we are not entitled to, always be on your guard. There would be certain ulterior motives of that person. Uriah over here was appeased to the maximum by King David. David is in a way asking Uriah to follow his own lifestyle. His own lifestyle was to enjoy life, to sleep, while all other people are in battlefield. Uriah tells, no, I will not. He tried to amuse him as well. You find that Uriah is intoxicated. He pushes him to his home. Uriah comes back. He doesn't sleep with his wife. He comes out of his home and he sleeps at the gate of the king's palace. David fails again the second way. So there was an appeasing, there was an amusing, and finally we find that there's an annihilation. Now, I started this talk by talking of all the good things about David. I still consider David as one of the greatest heroes in the Bible. But in this text, for me, somewhere, Uriah is the hero. Chapter 11, verse 11. Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah remain in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of the Lord camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink, and to lie with my life and to lie with my wife? As you live, and as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing. David, in fact, pushed Uriah to do something he wasn't. Pushed Uriah to do something that he was doing. Uriah tells no. Uriah became a model. For me, in this text, the hero is Uriah and the villain for me is David. Why? Because David eventually forgot his duty. And this is something that people who get hacked tend to do. If a system is hacked, the system tries to hack other systems also. We all know this. So if my laptop is hacked and whenever another pen drive is plugged in, the pen drive gets hacked and eventually other systems which all the pen drive gets plugged in also gets hacked. This is a common tendency of every hacked system. Same thing for David. And what eventually happens is that this is where I come across the deal making or the death warrant of the innocent, the annihilation. Since Uriah did not listen to David, David sends a message to Joab to tell, put Uriah into war. Let him stay in the front. The innocent Uriah was to be killed to safeguard the interest of the leader. There was a 4-line letter by his own hand that was sent as his death warrant. Verse 14, chapter 11, verse 14. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting and then draw back from him so that he may be struck down and die. There was a 4-line letter. So what we see over here, there's either a seduction by David or a silencing by David. He tried to seduce Uriah through many ways. It failed. And what does David do here? He tries to silence Uriah once and for all. A hack system tries to hack another. And then what do you find over here? We find the next D, the deal making of the powerful. Now Joab over here is the commander-in-chief. He is supposed to be, but then over here he acts as the power broker. He could have asked Uriah what had happened. He could have spoken up to David and said, what you are doing is wrong. He is one of my specialized soldiers. I will not kill Uriah. He is righteous than you. But to protect the interest of the leader, of his king, for his own personal gain later on, he tries to increase his image. He willfully puts Uriah in front of the hardest battle. Joab and David over here, we see that they try to help each other. There's also another portion in 2 Samuel chapter 3 verse 26 to 30 where Joab was condemned, but David saved him. So on receiving the letter, Joab does not ask any question to Uriah. He acted in the interest of the king without any reservation. He tries to read in between the lines, and then he acted according to the will of his master, the king. So we find that towards the end, we find that there was a failure for the Israelites. They lost the battle. And we find that there was a big problem. Verse 17, if you read, you can find that. The men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite was killed as well. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and instructed the messenger, when you have finished telling the king all the news about the fighting, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, why did you go so near the city to fight? Towards the end, then you shall say to him, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too. So the death of Uriah, or the failure in battle, was not because they had a hard-fought battle. It was a fixed match. And the message also we find over here was sent to David in a coded message. So the deal making of the powerful is what we find here. And finally, and fourthly, the daring prophet. So what Joab was supposed to do was not done by him. And then we find chapter 12, the entry of Nathan the prophet. David's gaze is comforting. And David's gaze over here had a big problem. But the moment he came up, and when the moment the messenger told Uriah the Hittite is also dead, we find verse 25. David said to the messenger, thus you shall say to Joab, do not let this matter trouble you, for the sword doers now one and one another. Press your attack on the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. Do not let this be evil in your eyes. But what David did was evil in the sight of God. So even if you try to cover up, you can never cover up things from the eyes of God. And that is where we find the entry of Nathan, the prophet. Now sent to something you denote power. We usually use this word to denote power. For example, David, he sent people for battle. He sent to get information about Bathsheba. He sent letter to Joab telling, bring back Uriah. He sends Uriah to battle again. He again sends the messenger to Joab and says, don't worry, bro, all is well. Fight and you will get over the city. He's always sending. But what do we find over here? Finally, God sent Nathan. Now, I'm hopeful that most of you are familiar with dogs. I have a dog here. We all have, most of us have seen good dogs. The main categorization between the dogs would be a watch dog or a guard dog, and then we have lap dog. Now, what does a watch dog do? Watch dog is very attentive. Now my dog, I had an earlier dog. Because of this scorching heat last year, it passed away. That dog was very attentive. It was a Desi breed, indie breed. If anyone touched the gate, the lock of the gate, it would start barking. If anyone came near me, even if to maybe to provoke the dog, people used to come and say, "We are going to, in a very angry mood." They would speak, so they would increase their volume just to see him barking. My wife was pregnant during that time. That dog was very much protective about it. They not, there was a time that I couldn't even go and touch her. The dog would start barking. The dog was a watchdog. I have a dog now. It's a Labra. Now Labras are lap dogs. They come, they appease you. They're so nice. They'll you do, even if you do something, they'll always be very nice to their masters. They are so good. All such kind of a dog. So there are two types of dogs. Joab is being a lap dog, trying to appease his master. Nathan, even at the verge of his life, he comes up and tells, what you're doing is wrong. Nathan, unlike Joab, being a watchdog, confronted David at the risk of his own life. He would be killed because the king, he's speaking against the king. But he tells, no, I will not do this. So in our lives over here, we can find that there are many power brokers today. Are we able to challenge those power brokers? Are we letting people infect ourselves? Or are we like Uriah? Like I said, my hero is Uriah. Whatever happens, I will not forget my duty. That made Uriah different. So we find the daring prophet over here who went up and said, you are that man. You are the one who have sinned. And that made a big difference. And then we find a denouncing God. My final point for today. A denouncing God and David. Now, what does the denouncing God over here see? We find that David confessed over here. The moment Nathan came up and said, you are that man, we find that David confesses before God. We find verse 11, chapter 12, verse 11. Thus says the Lord, I will raise up trouble against you from within your own house, and I'll take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and they shall lie with your wives in the sight of this very sun. Verse 12, for you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. David said to God, now the Lord has put away your sin. You shall not die. Nevertheless, because by this deed you have utterly scorned the Lord, the child that is born to you shall die. We find David over here, we find denouncing God. But David over here confesses. And that is where we read Psalm 51. We are very familiar with Psalm 51. David did things secretly here, but God tells, what you did in secret, I will do in public light. Acts of the Apostles is a very beautiful book, the history of the first church or the first Christians. And when we read that book, there's one message that stands out. We find that Saul was the person who was instrumental in the death of Stephen. He threw stones at Stephen. He was at least the leader of the group that threw stones at Stephen. But as the Acts of the Apostles progress, we find that eventually he was also prone to be thrown by stones by certain people. So whatever we do, if it's wrong, we should always remember that it will always come back to us. It's a boomerang. What we throw will definitely come back to us. I think I have another 4 more minutes. I'll quickly end. So David comes up over here and tells in Psalm 51, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. He's praying to God. He's confessing. And then he tells, create a clean heart in me, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. So when a system gets hacked, what do? We format the system. We reinstall a new OS, operating system, a new Windows. And we also put a new antivirus. Same thing what David said. Create a clean heart in me, O God. Create a better operating system in me, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. Put a solid antivirus in my life. I am fragile, but you can make me anti-fragile. Give me a new operating system. Give me a new antivirus. So that should be our prayer as well. God, wash me as a man or as a woman washes the garment. So we find that from a power pleasure, he takes up a surrendering mode, a surrendering from a power pleasure seeking mode in life to be a purged one. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. That was David's prayer. He prayed, God, I was hacked, but make me a better person. Give me a strong antivirus. Put in me a new operating system. And let that updated antivirus never make me prone to getting hacked anymore in life. So we find 5 scenes over here. My 5 topics for today, my 5 sub points were based on 5 scenes. David and Bathsheba, dereliction of duty. Then we find David and Uriah, death warrant of the innocent. David and Joab, deal making of the powerful. David and Nathan, the prophet, the daring prophet. God and David, denouncing God. 5 Ds, that is what I talked to you today about: dereliction, death warrant, deal making, daring prophet, denouncing God. So we always, this text reminds us that we need to update ourselves. The moment we don't update our apps in our mobiles, if we don't update them over a while, they get outdated. They wouldn't work in our operating systems. We need to keep ourselves updated. We need to have a constant dependence and conversion. We need to have personalized informations about God. So in this world, theocratic and multifaceted world, are we being fragile? If we are forgetting our duty, there are more chances of us being fragile. But if we do not forget our duty, God will be there with us to always fight against any evil that may happen in our lives. So for me in this text, Uriah the hero and David the villain. Though I started as David the glorious, I would end by telling, because David repented, there was a conversion in his life. And that eventually led him to become one of the strongest kings Israel had ever seen. So let us always dedicate ourselves to God to say, God, I am an empty vessel. Create in me a clean heart and put a new and loyal spirit within me. On that note, thank you very much for your wonderful time. I had a great time speaking with you guys. May God bless you all. And it's over to you guys. Thank you.